Good morning, guys. This is Storm Warden coming back at you today with another video update, and we're going to talk about Tropical Storm Helene, and we're going to talk about a really huge event that is going to take place across the southeast, which may be remembered for a very long time. That's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to go through the model guidance. We're going to go through some short range guidance to get an idea of the more mesoscale details, and we're going to break this down, but if you've been liking my weather content, please subscribe as I will bring you daily weather updates. And whenever we have these big, gigantic storms like this, I will certainly be bringing you updates. But without further ado, we're going to get right into it because I have a lot to talk about today. So we're going to start off by looking at Helene. And this is Helene. Now, this is probably going to become a hurricane fairly soon. Kind of like yesterday, I won't be surprised at the 11 a.m. update. This is Hurricane Helene. This is a 65 mile per hour tropical storm as we speak, so it's churning out here in the Caribbean. And yesterday afternoon, right around the 11, 12 o'clock time frame, we had models come in. Models significantly weakened this system because what models did is they had this system pretty much crossing the Yucatan Peninsula. Well, I didn't really believe that, and there's a lot of other people that in the weather community that didn't believe that, and unfortunately, we were right. This doesn't look to hit Yucatan. It actually looks at that it did that hard north turn, which is what I thought was going to happen, and it pretty much is only going to graze the Yucatan Peninsula, which means that significant to rapidly intensifying storm is probably a good bet at this point. So we're probably looking at a much stronger hurricane on its approach to Florida and the southeast Georgia and the southern Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina. So in upstate South Carolina. So this situation is dangerous, guys. I mean, my messaging this morning is very critical because tomorrow evening things are gonna go downhill fast because this is a fast moving storm. Once this makes landfall, it's going to be racing. So if you haven't prepared yet, you need to start preparing now because this system is going to be bad. We could be looking at a generational flood event for the southern Appalachia and northern Georgia, and we could be looking at some generational storm surge down in Florida. So, guys, please, 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 please be alert, be weather aware because this is looking like a really bad system. Probably one of the worst systems that we've seen in a long time. So we're going to start looking at the HWRF model. We're going to jump right into the hurricane models because this is what I'm going to show you this morning as well as a short range model. So let's start off with the HWRF model. This just came out fresh this morning. I haven't even looked at it yet. So as you guys are looking at it, I'm looking at it. So we're going through time, and it's just significantly strengthening this storm and gets it down to a 944, which is reasonable. This is a strong Cat 3 hurricane making an approach to the Big Bend area. Now, move this back a little bit, and it looks did a little wobble west, but generally speaking, models have been a little bit more consistent on the track towards the Big Bend area. Generally, they haven't moved more west or east at all. They kind of been right going through. They've been consistent in tracking us through the Big Bend. So we're going through, and that's a strong Cat 3 hurricane on the approach to Florida. This is going to bring some absurd storm surge to the Florida West Coast. We're talking almost 10 to 12 foot storm surge, maybe even more. So if you are told to evacuate, you need to do that. And then this is going to push up through Georgia and through the southern Appalachians, where it is just going to give us probably a generational event for these areas. If you're in Georgia, prepare for a really damaging event. We're talking about an event that you probably will remember years from now. If you're in the southern Appalachian Mountains, you probably want to leave the area. We're looking at a pretty serious flooding event, probably mudslides, landslides, significant flooding, winds in excess of 60 to 70 miles an hour. We're looking at a really bad situation for the southeast. So, guys, I don't. You need to be preparing if you haven't prepared yet. Make sure your phones are charged, flashlights, and you have a hurricane kit ready because this storm is going to mean business. Now we're going to move over to the HMO model, and we're going to jump through this. And generally speaking, guys, the HWRF and the HMO model have been have been certainly been best at really forecasting the storm and have been fairly consistent. So we're gonna go through time, and again, this model gets it down to a Cat 3 hurricane, just like the last model, which is again which is what the National Hurricane Center is forecasting. So they did a really good job there, and I think that generally that's very reasonable. A Cat 3 hurricane is very reasonable. That's a major hurricane on approach to Florida, and then this pushes up through Georgia and through the southern Appalachian Mountains. So this is going to be a really huge event. Um, I can't stress this enough that if you aren't prepared yet, you should be prepared, because this is going. Somebody in the southeast is looking at a generational event, probably an event that will be remembered years from now. That's how bad this is looking for the southeast. Particularly, I want to say Florida, Georgia, parts of western North Carolina, and upstate South Carolina. You're looking at probably a generational event with this system, and especially at the speed this is moving. This isn't going to have much time to just weaken. This is trekking along. I mean, from about the time it makes a landfall to Friday morning, it's always almost all the way up through Tennessee. So this just goes to show you that the forward speed of this storm is absolutely insane. So looking at the HAFSA model, and we're going through time. Now these models have been somewhat inconsistent because they want to show this draw on your screen here, this smaller core. More than likely that isn't going to happen because you have a much larger storm. These larger storms are not really susceptible to forming these smaller compact cores. I think one of the more broad open cores like the HWRF model show is probably more realistic, and it just makes more sense. But again, these models, they get it down to a Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricane, which is not off the table. It's not off the table. But regardless, guys, this is one of those situations where I will tell you, do not worry about the intensity of this system, because regardless, impacts are going to extend so far away from the center that it will not matter. It won't. Impacts are going to extend very, very far away from the center, and this is just going to be a really bad event. Now, this is the HAFSB model, and we're going through time, and it drops it down to a strong Category 5 hurricane. Again, do not pay attention to the intensity, but just look at the overall size of this storm. Just look at that. Half of Florida is being covered by this storm. That's how large it is. So again, expect a really, really big, large storm with impacts extending well away from the center, the low level center. So now that I showed you all that, impacts are gonna be significant. Now, one thing I want to show you is look at this area over the southern Appalachian North Carolina mountains. So let me erase this previous circle off your screen. I'll draw you a new one. This area along the North Carolina mountains, this area of North Carolina, you're probably looking at a generational flood event. A flood event that we only see, probably every so often, every blue moon, we see a flood event like this. This is going to be a significant, dangerous, catastrophic flood event for the Appalachian Mountains. This looks really bad. Also, if you're in northern Georgia, upstate South Carolina, this is looking like one of those events that will be remembered for a long time. So, the setup for flooding over the Appalachian Mountains is absolutely absurd. We're looking at tons of fire hoses, just moisture just running over the same exact areas. You combine that with winds in excess of 70 miles an hour, you're talking about a dangerous situation, guys. Because this hurricane is moving at such fast speed, those strong winds associated with the hurricane itself are going to be able to spread so far inland. They are, because of how fast the storm is moving. So you may look at this and say, well, it'll make landfall, but I'll probably have to deal with it. No, this storm is trekking along. So even if you're in northern Georgia, heck, even if you're in parts of eastern Tennessee, upstate of South Carolina, you're going to be looking at dangerous conditions from this system because of how fast it's moving. It's kind of reminds me of Michael, when the forward speed of Michael. Granted, Michael was much further northeast. It was impacting areas further east towards the Carolinas, but generally speaking, this is kind of giving me a idea of Michael with the forward speed of this. Maybe it's probably stronger than Michael. This is certainly stronger than Hurricane Irma. If any of you guys remember that, any Georgia residents remember that storm. So this storm is going to be it's going to be a big one. We could be looking at some really catastrophic impacts from this system across Georgia, upstate South Carolina, and Western Carolinas. This just looks like one of those systems that we don't get very often, especially with a track like this. Typically, when we get a storm that comes out of Caribbean, we typically get a more northeast track from a trough that's coming in. But the setup now is that we have a cutoff low to our west, and then we're gonna have that Fujiwara effect that I talked about yesterday, where this system is basically just gonna circle around the big upper level low, and it's just gonna fizzle out. So that's why we're getting this really wacky track where it's moving northeast and then it has to turn northwest because that cutoff low is pushing it that way. So, you know, while things could verify a little bit further east, which is my forecast, again, don't pay attention to the track. You know, impacts are going to extend, almost, I want to say 400 miles away from the center, which is very, very large. So, there's that. Now, I want to show you the WPC Weather Prediction Center forecast. Here's excessive rainfall outlook. Now, this only shows a moderate, but there is a high risk. There's a high risk of flash flooding across Appalachian Mountains and parts of, I think Appalachian Mountains may be part of Georgia. I couldn't remember. I honestly thought this site would have had it uploaded, but there is a high risk of flash flooding along the southern Apps. So guys, if you're in the Appalachian Mountains or even near it, you probably want to evacuate the area. We're looking at a serious flash flooding threat with this. If you're in northern Georgia as well, parts of upstate South Carolina, looking at a dangerous event with this system. Looking at the total QPF from this system, move forward, guys. That's I can't stress this enough. Some of this is getting towards that 10 to 15 range of rain. We could see a foot of rain in some areas. You get a foot of rain in these areas, you're talking really bad impacts, catastrophic impacts. So if you're in Western Carolinas, particularly closer to the mountains, if you're in northern Georgia, mostly all of Georgia, and parts of upstate South Carolina, you should be preparing for any event that you will remember. Now, I'm going to show you some short range guidance before I get out of here because I'm not really going to get into the mesoscale details probably till tomorrow. I'll probably have a much even bigger, longer update than this morning. But I just want to give you an idea of just how large this system is based off earlier runs of the short range models. Because as short range models get closer, as the storm gets closer, these will become a lot more accurate, and I can actually break down impacts from state to state compared to right now where our storm is still out here in the Caribbean. I want to wait a little bit longer before I start giving more detailed impacts in your state. But I can give you a general idea. So here's the ARRR model, and we're going through time. And look at all this rain. And guys, remember, this is all associated with Helene. So we're seeing rain this far away from the center. Look how far away from the center that is. We're seeing rain as far north as Tennessee from a storm that hasn't even made landfall. So this just goes to show you that this storm is huge. It is covering multiple states. Now, as this pushes northeast, this system will make landfall somewhere in Florida, Big Bend area probably. And then look at that. Look at that. Look at all the rain for the southern Apps up here. This is going to be a generational event, guys. And it may not look like much like based off this, but I'm telling you guys right now, this is all heavy rain. This is heavy rain. And this is the earlier run of the short range model, so they're not going to be as accurate. So don't pay attention to this number right here. It'll probably be a lot stronger than that. But just pay attention to the overall size of the storm. That is a huge storm. So just because you live outside the cone of uncertainty or whatever does not mean that you're going to be excluded from impacts. So we're going to look at, I want to show you the futurecast wind gusts because I think this is also a good tool to show you just the overall size of this system. And again, please don't pay attention to the number at the bottom. I'm just trying to give you an overall idea of the size of this system. Look how far your winds extend from the center. The center of circulation is somewhere over here. Your winds extend all the way almost into the triad of North Carolina. This just goes to show you how big our storm is. So guys, even if you're in Raleigh, we probably won't see extreme or major impacts. We will certainly see impacts because of how large this storm is. So, here's another short range model that kind of now, the NAM is notorious for dropping down millibars like this. It's false. That doesn't happen. It has something to do with latent heat releases, and it just doesn't. It doesn't know when to turn them off. So basically, we just get these weird numbers showing off NAM 3. Don't pay attention to that. The reason why I'm showing you this is because I'm trying to show you the overall size of this system. Very, very large. And it just, we're seeing feeder outer bands all the way here in Raleigh. So, if you're in the path of this system, you need to be prepared for a damaging storm. Now here's a NAM 12KM model, and it has a reasonable solution. It gets us down to a Cat 3 hurricane, and then push this northeast. And just look at the size of this thing, man. Just look at the impacts across Georgia, upstate South Carolina, western Carolinas. This is going to be a damaging storm, guys. Not to mention the tornado threat that will probably take place for the eastern Carolinas, probably from our neck of the woods here in the Raleigh area, points east. That's where a tornado threat will probably reside. So, after everything I just showed you, we'll refresh this page here. And there's that. Now, I actually want to take you to something else here because I want to show you this as well. Let's see here. Click on link. And guys, if you want to access this page, just type in www.nhc.noaa.gov, and you can access this just as I can. This is public, and anybody can look at it. Here's the peak storm surge map. 10 to 15 foot storm surge. Guys, this is capable of knocking houses off their foundation. If you're told to evacuate down here in Florida, please do so. Even down here in this 5 to 8 foot storm surge, that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. Storm surge is going to be a huge threat. This is just, 10 to 15 foot storm surge, and you're knocking houses off their foundation. So if you're along the Florida West Coast, if you're told to evacuate, you need to do just that because we're looking at a dangerous threat. And here's that high risk. Here's that high risk I was just telling you about. Here it is. Look at this high risk of flash flooding across these areas. Look at that. This, guys, whenever they issue a high risk of flash flooding, what this means is that the confidence for a significant flash flood event is so high that they had to issue this high risk. And we could be looking at flash flood emergencies, all types of things going on in this high risk. So guys, please, I can't stress enough that if you're in the Western Carolinas, just because this system is making landfall down here doesn't mean anything. This storm is going to be racing off to the north. So, and as it does so, it's going to wreak havoc all across the southeast, particularly from about Charlotte points west. Guys, this storm is going to wreak havoc. We will probably have a robust tornado threat to the east from that warm air advection and that strong low-level winds. So I'll probably talk about that more tomorrow. But over here towards the west, the impacts are going to be fairly significant. Probably something that we'll remember decades from now. And again, I'm not here trying to scare you, but just giving you an overall idea. Here's the wind speed probabilities, and obviously these will go up, but that is a great signal going all the way into the central Georgia area that we will see tropical storm force winds. So, and here's the hurricane wind speeds, and this might not look like a lot, but the fact that this extends a little bit into Georgia is absolutely insane. So guys, I know I keep repeating myself, but if you're in these areas, and you're not prepared, then you need to get prepared because this is looking bad. And here's the latest track of this system as well. And again, if it shows that most of North Carolina, South Carolina is not in the cone, do not pay attention to the cone. Impacts extend well away from the cone. So this is just the center of circulation. Where you see these letters, that's just the center of circulation. That isn't that. Impacts are going to extend well away from this. So, you don't. And here, let me draw this on your screen actually. This is the center, right? And I'll draw the little dots there. But the impacts are probably going to cover from about here all the way to here. And then impacts could be all throughout this area. So this is why, when you see this, people are all, even me, myself, worry about the track. Again, the track does not matter at this point in the game. Whether it goes east, whether it goes west, impacts are going to probably remain the same across most of these areas. So, this was probably one of my longer videos, kind of like yesterday, but, I want to get on here to really keep you guys aware and warned of this big system, because this is going to be a big system. This isn't hype. This isn't clickbait. This is pure, honest meteorology. We're looking at a dangerous system for these areas. Probably a system, and I keep saying it, but this is probably going to be a generational event, especially for the flash flooding that will take place over the southern Naps. So, that's really all I got, guys. I don't want to keep going in circles. Tomorrow, though, I will certainly have a much more detailed forecast for each state, where I'm breaking down models. Like tomorrow will probably be a very, very long video, as I will probably be breaking down each state, each impacts, and what's really going to happen. But this morning, I kind of just want to give you guys an update, but I also want to show you guys hurricane models and what's the general idea. Because this system's still pushing out into Yucatan and out of Cuba, I want to wait until tomorrow to give you even more detailed forecasts before I start making forecasts for each state. So that's all I got, guys. You should be preparing, if you're not prepared yet in the southeast, for a significant storm that could be generational.